This is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about the new season of What If, Season 2, Episode 2. What if Peter Quill attacked Earth's mightiest heroes?
This is taking too long. I will find the boy and destroy him and the seedling myself.
Hey, Lightning Boy, we kind of have a team thing going on here.
And I have a duty thing going on here, Mustache Man, to see to it that the boy submits to Asgardian justice.
Which entails what, exactly?
Eternal flagellation, impalement, some light maiming, standard stuff.
We can't just let you take him. We need to study him.
We need to kill him.
Welcome back, fellow Defenders, to the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries. It is What If, Season 2, Episode 2. What if Peter Quill attacked Earth's mightiest heroes? And also, what if TV Podcast Industries was a man down and didn't have Chris Jones? Well, you will find out sure enough, because I am one of your hosts, John.
And I'm your other host, Derek. Yes, we're Chrisless.
Where is Chris? I like that. Chrisless. It's like Christmas.
It is.
But without Chris.
And like chrysalids.
Well, that as well. Yeah. Another good reference there.
There you go.
Derek. Or should we call what if ellipses question mark?
Well, that's basically is the name of the show, isn't it? Yeah, it's always the three dots and ellipses. Let's check what that was earlier on, didn't you?
I did. Because I knew they had a name and I couldn't remember what it was.
Yeah. So ellipses. But yes, unfortunately, Chris unable to join us for this episode. We're trying to do a bit of catch up. As we mentioned in the last episode, all these episodes of What If coming out daily from the 22nd of December, and we weren't able to cover them any earlier. So we're trying to fit them all in around our schedule. Very busy around New Year's as well. So.
Bang, 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 bang.
Pretty much.
Goes Disney Plus,
Doesn't
indeed. Yeah.
Doesn't it? I'm not sure I like having 9 episodes of a show that's going to take possibly 2 years for the next season to come, all coming out daily.
Yeah, so it would be nice if it was weekly, for sure.
Spread a bit further.
Yeah, a little bit more spread.
Yeah.
Like too little butter over toast.
It's almost the Lord of the Rings quote.
Almost the Lord of the Rings quote. I feel like butter spread too thinly over toast. Or something like that. Anyway.
I feel like butter spread over too much bread.
Yes.
That's it. Yes, that's
something
it.
like that.
Yeah,
anyway, enough Lord of the Rings references, because this is our spoiler-filled discussion of episode 2 of the new series of Marvel's What If. And this time we get to see what if Peter Quill attacked Earth's mightiest heroes.
Mm-hmm. And just a reminder for those of you who haven't subscribed to the podcast or who may just be joining us for What If for the first time, please head on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com. You can subscribe to the podcast over there and get all of the shows that we've been covering. We've done over 800 episodes covering tons of the MCU, but loads and loads of other shows, especially in the last couple of years.
Yes.
We're doing about 100 shows a year, haven't we?
Certainly. And indeed, we have done What If Season 1. So if you want to follow the through line of What Ifs, please head on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can join any mysterious podcast player in the multiverse of your choice.
Yeah.
We also love feedback as well, so you can send in your emails to feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com, and we will read them out on the podcast in our feedback section. And of course, we also have our spoiler-filled posts over on our Facebook group as well. Just head on over to facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries.
Absolutely. And you can also now follow us on Threads. Pop on over to Threads and look for TV Podcast Industries. We're trying to move there from Twitter, but want to retain followers and people that like our posts. So come join us over there in Threads. The more we get, more chance we can get away from Twitter, right?
Yeah. So it can be our X.
Exactly.
But Derek, what are some of the episode details for episode 2 of this new season of What If? What if Peter Quill attacked Earth's mightiest heroes?
Well, the executive producers for the show, of course, are Bryan Andrews, AC Bradley, and Brad Winderbaum, along with Kevin Feige. Head writer for the show is AC Bradley, and this episode was written by Matthew Chauncey, one of the other head writers for the series as well. This episode and most of the other episodes are directed by Bryan Andrews as well.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, a little switcheroo from episode 1 with the director there.
Yeah. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with their synopsis for What If Season 2, Episode 2, What If Peter Quill Attacked Earth's Mightiest Heroes?
Sure. In 1988, Yondu takes Peter Quill to Ego, who urges him to help his expansion across the universe. 6 months later, after ravaging several worlds, Quill returns to Earth. In response, Peggy Carter and Howard Stark assemble a team of Earth's mightiest heroes composed of Bill Foster, King T'Chaka of Wakanda, the Winter Soldier, Dr. Wendy Lawson, and a reluctant Hank Pym, who brings his daughter Hope van Dyne along. After a scuffle on Coney Island, the team detains Quill with the help from Thor. As the team discusses their next move, Van Dyne connects with Quill over music and realizes that he returned to Earth to come home. Hope frees Quill, who travels to Missouri. Meanwhile, T'Chaka, Foster, and Thor aid Carter's forces holding back Ego, who has traveled to Earth to continue his expansion into the universe. Meanwhile, Pym and Lawson encounter Quill visiting his mother's grave, and a sympathetic Pym convinces him to stand against his father. The Winter Soldier, under the influence of his Russian handler, prepares to assassinate Quill until Stark reminds him of his best friend Steve Rogers. Just as Ego overwhelms the heroes and attempts to obtain his seedling, Pym and Quill arrive in time to stop him, with Quill using the cosmic energy of the celestial seedling to destroy Ego's avatar form. The team, minus Bucky Barnes, celebrates their victory before setting out to confront Ego's planetary form.
Back once again in 1988, a big year for the MCU.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And again, another Guardians of the Galaxy kind of connection or thread here, this time with Peter Quill. Obviously, episode 1 had Nebula, and her connection with Guardians of the Galaxy. So yeah, we have, that thread here.
Yeah. So our first point really is, what if we had seen this before? So what MCU movies is this referencing? What's the jumping off points? As you say, the opening of Guardians of the Galaxy when Peter Quill gets taken from Earth is the starting point. We saw how that story played out in Volume 2 when Peter got delivered to Ego, his father. But here it's effectively saying that he gets taken by Yondu, and then Yondu doesn't have the change of heart that he had in the original Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's fast forward, effectively.
Exactly, just hands him straight over to Ego. So, as a young, impressionable child, directly after losing his mother, he's now in the hands of Ego, the living planet, to tell him his plan to take over the universe.
Yeah, although I did think him effectively disintegrating his Walkman immediately after sort of taking his son Peter, was probably a little on the nose for Peter, because you see how much music and that symbol of of that Walkman meant to him when he comes into contact with Hope van Dyne here, which is really important.
Absolutely.
I love this Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 kind of connection.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Ego did when he met Peter Quill in Volume 2. He destroyed his Walkman as well, almost immediately after getting there. So he was annoyed at Peter walking around with a Walkman when he's a celestial being, effectively. So that is connected to Volume 2. Just interestingly, last season when we had Chadwick Boseman appearing again as Black Panther, we had that episode where he became Star-Lord, and he was taken from Earth by the ship into space, brought into space by Yondu. So, that also took place in 1988 as well. So another, as I say, big year for the MCU, this year in 1988. There's also a reference here. We have spent a lot of time with Hank Pym and Hope van Dyne. This is about a year after Hope's mother disappeared into, the Quantum Verse. So that's again, a big moment. We saw Hank Pym leaving S.H.I.E.L.D. in 1988 in Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think it was, the opening scene of that, where we had Peggy Carter and Howard Stark, leaders of S.H.I.E.L.D., and now we had them back here in this episode as well. So loads of little connections there.
Yeah, the other connection with Ant-Man is Bill Foster as well, who is played by Morpheus. Sorry, I mean Lawrence Fishburne as well, who was in the Ant-Man series as well. So here, taking on a bigger, more super heroic character than we've seen from the Ant-Man series, really.
Yes, certainly larger. He's playing Goliath here, which is the character that he plays more often in the comic books. We know Goliath from comics. Yeah. So great to see him in there.
And I quite like that because as well there is another player here from Captain Marvel. Again, a significant role, but one that's, you know, more of an influence on Captain Marvel in the form of Dr. Wendy Lawson, who was a Kree looking to sort of almost change the Kree's outlook of you know, domination and empire building and colonization that had come to predominate within Kree society and with the supreme intelligence.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, really interesting choice here. I love, you know, as Wendy Lawson arrives, it's like, well, that's not an Air Force uniform. It's a Kree Force uniform. So again, you know, the fact that she's still in a Kree Force uniform, you know, are the Kree slightly different here, within this world, as well. And then, of course, finally, we have the Winter Soldier for sure, with the Winter Soldier here, under the control of the Russians here. So we have the reference to the Cold War rather than being under the control of Hydra, and being his tool for assassination, and world changing, you know, event changing, here.
Yeah.
But also even with the Avengers, you know, it's the end of the first Iron Man with the formation of the Avengers. This is almost a different version of the Avengers.
Yeah, so, happening much earlier. Yeah, what, 15 years earlier?
Yeah.
Right?
Whilst it's not an attack on New York like we got with that movie, it is the first engagement of these this group of avenging heroes.
Exactly. Hence why they're called Earth's Mightiest Heroes rather than Avengers in here. Yeah.
Yeah, but same thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Interchangeable sometimes, the comics. Yeah, absolutely.
Very different. Just not being done by Nick Fury.
Exactly.
In this instance.
Exactly. This time, of course, Peggy Carter and Howard Stark getting a bridge together.
Yeah. So, loads of different connections and threads here, from the MCU movies, but ultimately, going on to our second point, what if there was a small change? That change is, that Peter Quill, in effect, does not become the Star-Lord of the Guardians of the Galaxy that battles and defeats Ronan, the Kree general.
Accuser.
And the Accuser. But he is shorthanded through to Ego, and is immediately dropped off by Yondu and the Ravagers into the hands of Ego, who then has his time to sort of manipulate this impressionable young Peter Quill.
Yeah.
And in effect, rather than Thanos attacking New York in this instance, it is the young boy that is Peter Quill arriving on Earth, seemingly as a hostile, to take it over and continue, the expansion of Ego, through the activation of those celestial seedlings, that we saw.
Yeah. It's really interesting. We kind of hear a little bit later as Thor arrives that, effectively 8 of the 9 realms have been destroyed, by this expansion plan that Ego's put together. So huge impacts, by Peter being taken on board this early, him finding this celestial child of himself that's able to carry the weight and carry the power of Ego as well. So, I think that was the storyline in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, was that he had many children across many galaxies and, wasn't able to get any of them to take on his power and take on his abilities. It wasn't until he found Peter that he was able to do that. So here we have a much more impressionable Peter, as we said, directly after his mother died, being talked into working alongside Ego.
It's almost like his advance guard or emissary going to activate those seedlings are on the planet so that Ego effectively doesn't have to get his hands dirty.
Yeah.
But in this case, he does, because, I mean, I think at the heart of this, what I really enjoyed was that connection between Hope van Dyne and Peter Quill. You know, after he's been detained, by Earth's Mightiest Heroes, I just loved how, I loved how it linked in with the Pym family here. You know, we see at the start Hank Pym having trouble connecting with Hope, his daughter, with the loss of her mother and his wife, you know, just finding it difficult to be able to sort of connect with this kid.
And definitely does something that we can all relate to around the holiday period, where he's cooking dinner and Hope's looking at him going, where are the vegetables? Which is what I'm currently feeling like at the moment.
No, absolutely.
But potato chips are made from potatoes, which are a vegetable.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I kind of liked how that, you know, effectively he can't get a sitter, so just brings her to work, you know? But I liked how, you know, that chance event with Hope being there on the base where Peter is being, held, after sort of causing havoc in New York and their battle around Coney Island, and the fairground. I just liked how the two of them, just connected over the tape deck, you know, how, that tape deck, was it your mother that gave it to you? Asks Peter, you know, and you can see that it's important to her. And she ultimately shares it with him because she goes, I know my mum would like me to share this with you. And because as she finds out that, you know, in a sense, Peter wants to come home, because he's trying to get to Missouri to find out, pay his respects to his mother, because he hasn't connected with his father, Ego. In fact, really what we hear is like, he's just in my head. It's just like, Peter just doesn't appreciate that his dad is constantly in his thoughts, in his head, speaking to him, telling him what to do.
And you know, I when I watched it the first time, I kind of mistook the story, took it the wrong way round. I thought actually Peter was here on Earth after he had destroyed some of the other planets in the realms, or some of the other realms. But Peter's telling the truth here. He has come to Earth to escape from his father, to try and get back to his home, away from his father. The influence that Ego has on him hasn't led him to become the destroyer that he thought he would become. Peter did pull away from it. It was in this conversation the second time I watched it, that when he's talking to Hope and he's saying to him, well, why would I want to destroy my home planet? This is where I'm from. I'm coming back to Missouri, where I was taken from, a couple of months ago, really, at this stage. So,
but I like that at its heart are these two kids, really, you know, with Hope telling then all the assembled heroes that they've got it wrong about Peter and that he needs our help. And I like how she pitches it to Hank as well, you know, and it brings out the best in Hank here, where you see him, you know, engaging with Peter in Missouri at his mum's graveside. So I thought this had loads of heart, and I really, really enjoyed it. You know?
Definitely, yeah. Although I do like that that entire conversation was was under the watchful gaze of the Winter Soldier's sniper rifle, ready to take him out. Now he's still under control of Gorbachev and the Russian government, as you said. So he's not actually working. He's working kind of with Earth's Mightiest Hero, but not working for them. He's still under the control of his handlers, effectively, until Howard Stark breaks into his control and gets him to think about his best friend, Steve Rogers.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really good, isn't it? You know, you have Howard talking through the earpiece to the Winter Soldier after sort of interrupting his handler's transmission to him, you know, but bringing in Steve Rogers. I like how Howard says, I can't believe after all this time I'm still, you know, having to fall back on Steve Rogers. He's still helping me out here. And
absolutely,
it's the same with Hank, you know, where he's talking to Peter, trying to reason with him, you know, to ask him to help them, tackle his dad who's come to destroy his home planet. And I like that it's, Peter's talking about, I wanted to come home after, I miss my mom, I've lost her, but home doesn't feel right. And Hank says, that's the same as for me and for Hope. Our home doesn't feel right after the death of Janet Van Dyne.
Yeah.
And I just love that whole connection of in the case of Hank and with Peter, it's, a wife and a mother that has gone. And in the case of, the Winter Soldier, aka Bucky Barnes, it's his best friend, Steve Rogers, that, is there still ingrained despite all the conditioning, that's gone into making him the Winter Soldier. He still can see that. And actually with, Hank pulling in Peter close to him, then, you see him stand down with the sniper rifle. But even you can understand why Peter does go after Ego. And I just love that whole, battle because, Ego is really, I knew you were never a Celestial. You're a great disappointment, absolutely against him. And I love Peter coming back saying, actually, old man, my mom says I'm a Star-Lord.
Yes.
And I just thought the imagery of him just sort of absorbing Ego's power and then using it back against him was just so good. Yeah,
it was really, really cool. Really, really cool. Anything else you want to say about the Earth's Mightiest Heroes themselves, the team that we've got set up here, John?
Well, I liked King T'Chaka, and I love that he brings in the saying of Wakanda from when the 7 tribes weren't united, about, if you're waging a war on 2 fronts, and then use those 2 fronts against one another. I use Ego and Peter to attack one another.
The only way to win is getting out of your enemy's way when you're waging war on 2 fronts. Yeah,
so I thought that was really good. And
it's really smart as well because, we often see the Avengers fighting a threat and the Avengers win because they all work together to fight that threat. And here we have Peter versus Ego, and then the Avengers stepping out of the way and just kind of, keeping things at bay, really. Or at this, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, stepping out of the way. I thought that was a really good moment from T'Chaka. He has his big moment here. I liked Bill Foster as well. I thought he had a lot of fun moments. I liked, when Thor arrived and he was saying, I will fight until, there's no wind left in my lungs, and gets knocked back immediately. And Bill Foster standing over him as Goliath going, how much wind are left in your lungs now, Thor? After thinking he can take on a Celestial on his own. So trying to encourage Thor, just like they had to in the Avengers when Thor first appeared, trying to convince him he does need a team around him. Just because he may be godlike and may have godlike powers doesn't mean he can't do it without support from other people.
I like the detachment of Winter Soldier as well. Like after it's all done and he's not there celebrating at the Pym house, Hank basically asks Howard, do we need to lock our doors? Is he going to come after us now? Yeah. And it kind of, in a sense, Winter Soldier has gone into the wind and has sort of ditched, his, Russian, handlers altogether, to do his thing.
I guess he'd probably be taking on that role that Bucky Barnes had in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the TV show, where Bucky's now trying to make amends for his past.
Exactly.
So now that he's learned who he is and has broken that connection, I suppose that might be what he's doing. But again, interesting that it's Peggy Carter and Howard Stark that broke him from that, because if you remember right back to the first Captain America movie, we had Howard Stark and a young Peggy Carter all knew who Bucky was back then. They were all friends together. The 4 of them were all worked together for a long time before Bucky got captured. So good that still that friend group, I suppose, taking care of Bucky.
Yeah, absolutely. And then our last person is Dr. Wendy Lawson.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, isn't it? That Wendy Lawson worked on Project Pegasus. We see in the opening moments of the episode that this whole setting is set around Project Pegasus, a SHIELD facility. But it's quite interesting that they know that she's Kree really quickly. But again, S.H.I.E.L.D. is always one that, in the comics certainly, is always the one that knows lots more information than they're letting on. So maybe the world didn't know who Dr. Lawson was, but maybe some members of S.H.I.E.L.D. did. Nick Fury was a lower level agent until he met with Captain Marvel, and they met up with Dr. Lawson in Captain Marvel. And I think if I'm right, he joined S.H.I.E.L.D. in 1988, so he's not even a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now. This is before him. So that's, I suppose, quite interesting that maybe they did know that she was a Kree, hiding in plain sight, during this, or maybe because of her technological experience, she's the one that created the ship, the jump ship they're using throughout the episode. They brought her on board, and then she revealed herself, potentially. Yeah. That might be. Well,
it looks like she's loading the Tesseract into it.
She is. Yeah. So that was her mission when she was trying to build the jump ship at the beginning of Captain Marvel. When Carol Danvers is flying with her, they're using the technology that she's creating. So potentially she's using the Tesseract in that as well.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I think it's quite interesting that they have her in there, that they pull her in. It's quite
an interesting choice. I mean, I don't really know why, other than, just trying to pick, and I think a bit like with Bill Foster, a different person from the universe to be, more central, to see how that plays out. Exactly. And I think that's just really interesting, that kind of experimentation, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. It's a thing that happens so often in What If, forming a completely different version of the Avengers to the one you see on a regular basis in the comics, or a completely different version of the X-Men if the X-Men were featuring, who would be your main team if something happened at a different time. So quite cool to see that on screen.
Yeah, definitely.
But I suppose our final point usually is, what if the universe was changed forever? How would this affect the whole universe after this story?
Yeah. Well, I think first off, Ego is able to convince Peter, at least for worlds that aren't his home worlds, to be able to, be that advance guard to enact his expansion, and his plan to sort of take over the universe. Which is interesting.
Yeah. And at least he enacts his plan much earlier than he did in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, right?
Absolutely.
So even if he didn't convince Peter to join him, he's able to kick off his plan much earlier. So that's quite a massive thing, I suppose. Even bigger than that, when you have Thor saying that all of the realms have fallen except for Midgard, the Earth realm, I suppose, that's quite a massive thing. All of the other realms are gone, including Asgard.
Yeah.
So we don't have any Asgardians at all. Thor's on his own, which leads to kind of the other big moment. We have the Avengers established here, or Earth's Mightiest Heroes established here. They have a mission as well, which is going out into space to go and find Ego, the living planet, and destroy the planet so that this can't happen again. So, and that entire team includes Young Avengers. It includes Peter Quill and Hope van Dyne.
And Goose is also included in the Avengers. They have Flurkin power in this new Avengers as well.
I kind of like the walk into the light with the full team together, and you have this Flurkin walking confidently alongside the rest of the team.
Really good.
So that's quite an interesting team going out into space now to fight against Ego, the living planet.
Yeah, it was really good. So, I mean, yeah, I think this has certainly changed the universe and the makeup of the Avengers, which is a big deal.
It is. It is, because technically,
Thor being the only one consistent here.
Yeah, I was about to say that technically the Avengers were set up because of the arrival of Thor. Isn't that right? Was that always Nick Fury's idea when they first saw an alien from outer space coming to Earth? They realized they needed to set up a force to be able to take on any outer space force. And here, Thor is the last person to join the Avengers, the last person to arrive on Earth. So it's actually the arrival of Peter Quill that starts the Avengers here. So that's quite cool too.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. Would you like to see any more of this team in the future? If there was going to be an episode in season 3, let's say, would you like to see any of this team back together?
I think so. I thought, ultimately it was really an interesting lineup, to be honest. It's kind of like, I'd like to sort of have more Bill Foster and more Wendy Lawson, to be honest. And indeed Hank Pym as well. At the end of the day, yes, Hank Pym is big in the Ant-Man movies, but he is the second fiddle. I mean, he's not a cameo by any stretch of the imagination, but it's, to some extent, it's almost a bit like that. It's a bit down the order in terms of screen time. And I really enjoyed this Hank Pym, the trouble he's going through. And I like how it did connect back to, him leaving S.H.I.E.L.D. like we saw in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really good. I liked seeing the young Hope. I liked seeing the young Peter Quill.
Yeah.
So, this was all really good for me.
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't seen very much of Hank Pym's adventures as Ant-Man, right?
No, exactly.
So, it'd be kind of cool to see as well in the future. And I'd like to see what happens to Bucky being out on his own here, in the world, now released from the Winter Soldier much earlier. I guess, does that mean that he doesn't kill Howard Stark?
Well, it seemingly is the case, yeah. I mean, the others...
Yeah, because obviously he kills Howard Stark in 1992, 1993, something like that. So, this is before he kills Howard Stark. He's been freed from the Winter Soldier program.
He's had his moments, and I mean, the other thing, it almost to me is like, it mirrors the fact that he could go to Wakanda sooner. I mean, that side of the MCU where he was the White Wolf always was... really intriguing to me, and I wanted to see him carry on. Maybe you could argue we got a bit of that in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or Captain America and the Winter Soldier, but I love that kind of association. That's where he gets rehabilitated, and maybe in this case, it's going to be with King T'Chaka.
That'd be quite interesting. Good stuff.
Yeah, let's get on to our notes then.
John, do you have any notes to begin with?
Yeah, I just have the fact that on Coney Island, you see Peter Quill really as a kid. He's on the fairground rides, he's eating candy floss, and he has gotten himself a raccoon plushy toy.
Yes, he does.
Which ultimately gets its head lasered off, from as the Earth's Mightiest heroes engage with him for the first time on Coney Island. But I kind of like that we get the reference to Rocket the Raccoon here.
It's such a cute nod to
in
it,
Teddy Bear sort of referencing.
Yeah. It's such a cute nod, isn't it? Yeah, it's really, really nice to see that. The thing that's not so nice is, I think I just forgot to mention during here, the one thing that pushes Peter over the edge once again is just like in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, he learns that Ego killed his mom to get to drive Peter effectively. So that was quite a big moment. That moment. So he has learned all of that information at a really young age. Not only his father's plan, but also that his father killed his mother as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, quite a big one.
Good stuff. I don't think there's any more notes from myself.
No.
So let us get on to our defense. Derek, do you defend this episode?
I do defend this episode. Yeah, I like this. This is another interesting story. What would happen if Yondu had a change of heart? What would happen if Yondu didn't take Peter traveling around the galaxy with him for 15, 20 years? It's a really interesting idea that one change, if Yondu had been the person that Peter thought he was, he could have ended off here with Ego earlier, and 8 realms of the galaxy would have been destroyed because of that decision by Yondu. So Yondu turning out to be a massive hero for keeping Peter away from Ego, interestingly.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a great choice. And again, this is what if should be. It should be answering interesting takes on the MCU. So, I think right back when we covered Ant-Man and the Wasp, we saw Peggy Carter and Howard Stark in S.H.I.E.L.D. with Hank Pym leaving at the time, we went, I'd love to see a bit more of that story. They're all young enough actors. They can all come in and do a couple of episodes of a TV show together. Yeah. We've had Agent Carter as well. So seeing that kind of other end of Agent Carter's career, that she's now head and director of S.H.I.E.L.D., here she is with Howard Stark setting up the first version of the Avengers. I think that's cool, seeing a bit more of that, of those storylines as well. So yeah, overall, really liked this. Yeah, I thought it was a good episode. I would definitely defend it. How about yourself, John? Do you defend this episode of What If?
Yep, I really do defend this episode. I really, really enjoyed this episode. I'll give it 4.5 Goosey Lucy's out of 5. I really like the heart of this episode, between Peter and Hope van Dyne, to be honest, and also linked to Hank and that idea of loss and family, and sort of just having to, in a sense, almost, start anew, with trying to make somewhere home because of that loss. And I like how in the end it finished with that happy family ending at the Pyms, where they're all enjoying a sort of a celebratory meal, and it's almost like they have taken in Peter here after Ego has shown himself to be an utter disappointment of a father to Peter, by telling him of his murder of his own mother that Peter misses hugely. And Ego is that almost the other end of the spectrum to how Hank has responded. It's not been easy for him, like you see at the beginning, but by the end of this episode, he's responding to the fact he needs to step up for Hope, and he also steps up for Peter. So I really enjoyed sort of the hub or nub of this, and I think the additional elements of a new Earth's Mightiest Heroes, a new Avengers with a different lineup, was really good to see and intriguing. I like that you had Hope and Peter as part of that by the end, along with the old Flurkin as well in the form of Goose. I love the action sequences, some of the imagery here. As I say, I think in particular when Peter sort of has absorbed that power from the seedling and sort of projects it back at Ego's avatar form. So I would absolutely want to see how they confront his planetary form. I think that would be a really good addition. I like that Yondu, sort of handing Peter to Ego as well. Just again, like with all of these small changes, really interesting, large consequences here. So yeah, for me, this is 4.5 Goosey Lucy's out of 5. Really solid, good, full of heart. And Hope van Dyne in brackets. So yeah, definitely do defend this episode.
Absolutely. And again, second episode here, and I can't see, these all connecting together. Very different from the first episode, other than potentially this whole team are going out into space.
Yeah, and it's some kind of Guardians of the Galaxy connection so far.
Yeah, absolutely. But John, what if we had some feedback?
Well, we do. Yeah,
we do.
Question answered. Yes. First up, over on email, we have received some feedback from our great fellow defender, Coffee and Vodka, who says, "Greetings, fellow old school defenders. The first viewing of episode 1 provided a by the book and a tonal performance of Nebula. The second watch shows subtlety in Nebula's words and actions, foreshadowing everything formerly hidden, a noir world of light, dark and grey where few motivations are readily apparent. No subtlety here, however, just a good old-fashioned team-up against a big, bad dad, and a son looking to get out from under his thumb. It was good to see Goliath as part of the team, and always a plus to have Hank around. Instant exposition, getting to the next panel, the next fight, and the next explosion. Ending with a no muss, no fuss. Gosh, I guess we're a super team now. This was in every way designed to bring out the 13-year-old reading comics by flashlight under the blanket past bedtime. A total blast with another coming up tomorrow. Good days indeed. 4 Derek-designed Thors, diabolical daughters, and a mountainous ego out of 5. Peace and take care. Coffee and Vodka."
Excellent stuff, Coffee and Vodka. That's a reference to my hatred of Party Thor from season 1 of What If, I think.
I think it might
whereas
be.
I really liked the Thor in this episode. I thought he worked really well. Like the anger that he comes in, his entire realm has been destroyed and he's here to take down Ego, and if he has to do it alone, he'll do it alone. I thought that was a nice change from the Thor that we've been seeing, the comedy version of him that we've been seeing for such a long time in the movies. So yeah, totally with you. That's my version of Thor that I like to see on screen.
Excellent stuff. Thanks so much, Coffee and Vodka. over on Facebook, we got some feedback as well. First up was Heather Wallace, who says, another good episode. And it's great. This season is exploring scenarios. I loved the subtle nod to Rocket when Peter chooses a raccoon-like toy at the carnival. I'm so impressed with the art and animation. There was a very subtle shift in Yondu's expression from kindness of the version we know to malevolence of the Yondu handing Peter over. It was very creepy. Good stuff, Heather. I know exactly what you mean. It was almost like a sneering malevolence. Almost like, right, now give me my cash, and an understanding of maybe what he's done, and also probably what protection from ego he's gotten for doing it, you know? So yeah, I caught that, subtle change in his expression as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Heather. Also on Facebook, Sandy Resendez says, I really like this episode. Even being influenced by his father at a younger age, he still knew he was wrong and defeated him in the end. I just realized that if Bucky was freed, then he wouldn't have killed Howard Stark a few years later. I guess they could send another Winter Soldier to do it, but it wouldn't have been Bucky. It's a great point, Sandy. I think we only just came to that realization at the end of the discussion that we were having about the episode there. How silly are we to not notice that? That's a massive change for the Winter Soldier character. That means that there's no civil war, right? There's no battle between Iron Man and Steve Rogers in the future over Bucky Barnes and the murder of Tony Stark's father, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's really interesting change for this episode. Jeff Childs asks, so S.H.I.E.L.D. knew about Wakanda and the Wendy Lawson was Kree.
Exactly. Actually, that's another really interesting point, Jeff. Yeah, that King T'Chaka has effectively, revealed the Black Panther significantly earlier in the timeline.
Yeah, he has. Now, I know that when Black Panther comes out and he reveals the technological side of Wakanda, that's absolutely unknown to the world. They're masquerading as a third world nation. That's why they have the shield over it and nobody can see through the shield. But Howard Stark does make a mention of the fact they had some vibranium, which is what they made Steve Rogers' shield out of back in World War II. So there may have been some connection there between the two.
Yeah,
I think
maybe.
Back when that first Captain America movie was made, I think they kind of just said it's made from vibranium, but didn't talk about where it came from. So here, it's revealed almost that there has been a connection between Howard Stark and Wakanda, and that's where he got the material from. So yeah, that's quite interesting. And yeah, we kind of mentioned the Wendy Lawson thing. Maybe she's revealing herself as Kree here for the first time, although Peggy Carter doesn't seem too surprised. She seems to be aware of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We're in an alternate universe, I guess, so they kind of get away with some things that they may not be getting away with in the main version of the universe, probably for reasons of making it easy exposition, how you can get this team together.
Yeah, within
right?
the time frame of each episode. Plus, in a sense, because it is what if, it is absolutely the opposite, that everything is unconnected to some extent. You can totally break the connection, even though they're taking through lines and changing them. It doesn't have to be connected in that way.
Kind of.
I guess.
But they are kind of saying that everything's connected up until the point that the change is made.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to be able to take those slight differences. Donald Dennis also had a few questions. He asks, what did you think of this version of Thor?
Yes, Derek, what did you think of this version of Thor?
Yeah, I
know you've answered this.
I know. I responded to Donald thinking he was talking about a very quick cameo of comedy Thor in the next episode of What If. So yes, to repeat, Donald, your question is about this Thor in this episode. I liked him much more than we saw in the last season, and than we've seen in most of the movies in the last couple of years as well. I like this version of Thor. He's really good.
Excellent.
Donald continued, also, do you think that in episode 2 of this season we witnessed the big bad for the season overall, or do you feel they will skip the overarching story this time? While I'd love them to tie a bunch of these things into one big story, I don't want them to feel it's necessary every season of What If.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I say, at the moment, it just feels like there's a Guardians of the Galaxy kind of thread here so far from these first two. And I'm assuming, Donald, then the big bad being Ego in its
planet itself.
Form.
Yeah. That could be interesting. But yeah. I know we have some very different episodes coming up over the rest of the season, so not sure how we get all of them into space and going after Ego, or whether that would be the right thing. I think we haven't seen enough, and I definitely didn't think watching the first season of What If that it was all going to culminate in one big showdown at the end of the season either. So I think it took me about 6 episodes to realize there was anything connected at all. And there's certainly nothing specifically being called out in these first 2 episodes where the Watcher's coming in and pulling individuals out of the world or anything like that just yet. So we'll have to watch a bit more.
Yeah, definitely. Good stuff, Donald, and as well Jeff, Sandy, as well as Heather again, and Coffee and Vodka. Good stuff. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah. If you want to send any feedback into us, you can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. There's a spoiler post up there for every episode of What If that's been released so far.
Yes, excellent. Thanks so much for joining us, fellow defenders. As always, we are going to be back next time to chat about episode 3. What if Happy Hogan saved Christmas?
'Twas released the night before Christmas.
It was.
And we will be recording probably
the
the night before New Year's, I think, is roughly when we're recording, right?
Indeed.
Good stuff. Thanks so much for joining us. Chat to you again next time.
Yeah, speak to you next time, fellow defenders. In the meantime, of course, though, keep watching, keep listening, and keep defending.
Bye.